The movie begins in 1898. Daniel Plainview is prospecting in New Mexico when he discovers silver. Excited, he sets off dynamite to create a larger hole, but upon re-entering it after the explosion, he falls and breaks his leg. This isn't enough to make him give up though. He stuffs the silver inside his shirt and climbs out while dragging his broken leg. Then he drags himself through the dirt all the way to town to sell the valuables he has found. By 1902, he has shifted to the oil business and started his own drilling company. While drilling in Los Angeles, an accident with the machinery kills one of his employees, leaving behind an orphaned baby. Daniel decides to adopt the child as his own son, H.W. Plainview, who becomes his nominal business partner. From then on, Daniel travels from town to town, delivering a heartwarming speech to persuade landowners to choose him over large oil companies when leasing their land for drilling. He uses his son to convince them that he is a family man who works with honest local laborers and avoids trouble, unlike corporations. Whenever someone asks about his wife, he simply states,
"She died in childbirth, Mrs. Bankside, so it's just me and my son."
One day in 1911, Daniel is approached by Paul Sunday, a young man who claims that his family's property in Little Boston, California has oil underground. Daniel tries to extract more details from him, but Paul proves to be a tough negotiator and secures $500 in exchange for the location of his family's goat ranch, where he insists plenty of oil can be found. Days later, Daniel and H.W. arrive at the ranch pretending to be quail hunters. They meet Paul's father, Abel Sunday, who offers them hospitality, including water and goat milk, served by his daughter Mary Sunday. While setting up camp, they also meet Paul's twin brother Eli Sunday, a pastor who promises to bring them dinner. As they investigate the area, they confirm Paul's claims. There is indeed oil on the land. Daniel sees this as a perfect opportunity to build a pipeline leading to the beach, strike a deal with Union Oil, and avoid the costs of railroads and shipping. Later, after dining with the family, Daniel tells Abel that he wants to buy the land because he loves quail hunting and his sick son needs the fresh air. He initially offers a very low price, but Eli, aware of the oil, demands a bonus $10,000 for his church. Daniel counters with $5,000, payable only if the business prospers, and then pressures Abel into accepting the deal. The next day, Daniel visits a realtor to gather information about the surrounding landowners, planning to acquire their properties as well. He also contacts his business partner, instructing him to bring all his employees to begin work. Meanwhile, H.W. spends time with Mary and learns that her father beats her if she doesn't pray. As days pass, the business slowly but steadily grows. Daniel successfully purchases all the surrounding land except that of William Bandy, who insists on speaking with him in person. Assuming it's a tactic to demand more money, Daniel ignores him, expecting Bandy to come to him when he realizes no one else is interested in his property. Daniel then delivers a speech to the local town, emphasizing how oil drilling will create opportunities for growth. He explains that his employees will bring their families, leading to the establishment of schools, wells, new roads, and farmland, all of which will generate employment. After days of construction, the well is finally ready. Eli arrives with his church group to welcome the workers and then requests to bless the well before drilling begins. Daniel agrees, but when the time comes for the opening, he delivers a few words with Mary by his side, including a quick blessing, and prevents Eli from participating. H.W. pulls the lever, and the driller starts working without issues, leading to a town-wide celebration. During the festivities, Daniel approaches Mary and promises her, in front of Abel, that her father will never hit her again. Not long after, an accident occurs at the well, resulting in the loss of an employee. Daniel reprimands his workers for failing to warn each other when someone is down there, then ensures the deceased's belongings are safely stored in a chest. The following morning, he visits the church and watches one of Eli's sermons, which is dramatic and even features a supposed miraculous healing of an elderly woman's arthritis. After the service, Daniel asks Eli to say a few words at the worker's burial and ensure his belongings reach his family. Eli agrees, but the two argue over faith. Eli insists that working on an unblessed well is dangerous, while Daniel refuses to give his employees time off for church, believing their free time should be spent resting in preparation for their 12-hour shifts. Meanwhile, Eli's church is undergoing renovations to accommodate its growing number of followers. Days later, the workers discover a gas leak, which leads to a massive explosion. H.W. is nearby when it happens, and Daniel rushes to save him before the fire ignites. However, by the time they return home, the damage is already done. H.W. has lost his hearing. As the drilling tower collapses, the fire continues to rage. The next day, they use dynamite to extinguish it, as the blast forces the burning fuel and oxygen away from the source. That night, Daniel sleeps, cradling his son. As days pass, HW remains bedridden and depressed. Concerned, Daniel begins searching for a teacher from the city to help him. Sometime later, Eli confronts Daniel in front of his employees, demanding the money he was promised. In response, Daniel slaps him to the ground, beats him, and taunts him for failing to heal his son despite supposedly performing miracles for others. Dragging Eli by the hair, he throws him into a pool of oil and warns him never to ask for the money again. That evening, during dinner at the Sunday household, Eli erupts in anger at Abel for allowing Paul to sell information about their land, and for trusting Daniel. In his fury, he attacks his father, throwing him to the floor while hurling insults at him. Days later, a mysterious man arrives at Daniel's door, claiming to be Henry Plainview, Daniel's half-brother from another mother. Henry admits that he once attempted oil drilling but was never as successful as Daniel. He also confesses to having been in jail for a time. That night, Daniel drugs HW to make him sleep, then shares cigarettes and stories with Henry. While Daniel remains guarded about certain aspects of his past, he does admit to being highly competitive, revealing that he despises most people and doesn't want anyone else to succeed. Later that same night, HW starts a fire inside their house. Henry wakes up just in time to put out the fire, and HW tries to run away, but Daniel goes after him and catches him before he can escape. The following day, Daniel takes HW with him to board a train, pretending they are going on a trip together. However, when the train is about to leave, Daniel tells HW he needs to have a word with the conductor and gets off, leaving the boy alone. HW realizes he is being sent to the city by himself and tries to get off as well, but the train is already moving and it is too dangerous. Sometime later, Daniel and Henry have a meeting with representatives from Standard Oil who want to buy his entire business and land. At first, Daniel seems willing to listen, but he is unsure what he would do if he no longer worked. The representatives keep mentioning that he could spend more time with his son, which Daniel takes as a slight. Feeling insulted, he turns down the offer and leaves in anger. Although HW is away, Daniel tries to ask for news about him every now and then. Eventually, he makes a deal with Union Oil to build the pipeline to the coast that he had always wanted. The only issue is the last piece of land, which belongs to William Bandy, whom Daniel never approached. He finally goes to see him, but Bandy is not home. Only his grandson is there, and he tells Daniel that they will never allow him to drill on their property. Later, Daniel and Henry go out to place metal stakes at specific spots around the land. After spending the afternoon swimming together, Daniel tells Henry stories about their old neighborhood, but Henry's responses make him suspicious. That evening, Daniel lends Henry some money so he can hire a girl. When Henry returns, Daniel confronts him at gunpoint. Henry confesses that he is an imposter. He met the real Henry in the city, and they became friends while working together for months. The real Henry had wanted to visit his brother, but he didn't have enough money, and he eventually died of tuberculosis. This imposter had used stories from Henry's diary to pretend to be him. He swears he means no harm, but Daniel shoots him in the head anyway, then digs a grave to hide the body. Afterward, Daniel reads his brother's diary and breaks down crying. The next morning, William Bandy finds Daniel and reveals that he knows what he did to the fake Henry. Bandy refuses all of Daniel's money offers and tells him he will only allow the pipeline through his property if Daniel gets baptized.
You should be washed in the blood of Jesus Christ.
With no other choice, Daniel accepts, not wanting to lose money on his project. Bandy takes him to church where, during the service, Eli forces him to kneel and confess his sins, including abandoning his child.
Abandoned my child.
Say it louder. Say it louder.
I've abandoned my child! I've abandoned my child! I've abandoned my boy!
Eli slaps him multiple times to drive out the devil, pours holy water over his head, and officially baptizes him. With no further obstacles, construction of the pipeline begins. Daniel arranges for HW to return home, telling him he loves him upon his arrival. A teacher also accompanies HW so he can continue learning sign language. One day, Daniel takes HW out for lunch, where they run into the Standard Oil representatives. Daniel can't resist making a scene to show them he is both a good father and a successful businessman, boasting about his deal with Union Oil. Meanwhile, Eli leaves town to do missionary work. In 1927, a now adult HW marries Mary, who has also learned sign language to communicate with him. Daniel, now extremely wealthy from his oil pipeline business, lives in a mansion with servants. One afternoon, HW visits him with an interpreter. He tells his father that he loves him but misses working in the field, so he and Mary are moving to Mexico to start their own drilling company. Daniel is not happy to hear this, claiming that this makes HW his competitor, despite his son's protests. Daniel continues using demeaning language about HW's sign language and demands that he speak for himself.
Got something to say to me, then say it. I'd like to hear you speak instead of your little dog. Woof, 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 woof.
I'm going to Mexico with my wife. I'm going away from you.
However, this only further angers Daniel, who accuses him of ruining his reputation. He then cruelly admits that HW is not his biological son. He was just an orphan baby found in a basket in the desert, whom Daniel took in to appear more respectable in business. He also tells HW that he is less than a bastard and has nothing of Daniel in him. Hurt but composed, HW tells him that he is glad he has nothing of Daniel in him before leaving. As he walks away, Daniel yells insults at him, but can't help remembering their time together. Depressed and now a heavy alcoholic, he falls asleep in his private bowling alley. A servant later wakes him when Eli arrives for a visit. Eli speaks about his work as a missionary and at a radio station, repeatedly reminding Daniel that they are family-in-law. He also informs Daniel that Bandy has died, and his grandson now owns the land. That grandson is part of Eli's church, so Eli offers to act as an intermediary if Daniel wants to drill there. Daniel pretends to be interested, but first, he demands that Eli admit he is a false prophet and that God does not exist. At first, Eli hesitates, but after some pleading and asking for $100, he gives in, shouting the words aloud, just as he had once forced Daniel to confess his sins in church.
I am a false prophet. God is a superstition.
When Eli finishes, Daniel mockingly reveals that the land has no oil left. He had already drained it by siphoning oil from neighboring properties through his pipeline. Devastated, Eli finally admits that he is in desperate times, having lost money in the 1929 stock market crash. He has also strayed morally and now pleads for Daniel's help. But Daniel feels no pity for him. He taunts him, saying that Paul was the true chosen one. He is now a successful businessman, thanks to the $10,000 Daniel had paid him years ago for information. As Eli begs Daniel to stop, Daniel grows increasingly aggressive. He grabs Eli, throws him into the middle of the bowling alley, and begins hurling bowling balls at him. Finally, he picks up a bowling pin and strikes Eli in the head, killing him. A servant hears the noise and calls out to Daniel from the other side of the door. Daniel, exhausted and delirious, simply replies,
I'm finished.
"Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and I'll see you in the next video."